I'm Jeannie.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Nikki from Tyrion's Landing,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the one you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in
3,
2,
1.
This is it. The part of your week where you get to put your headphones on, relax, and listen to a bunch of geeks geek out about geeky things. They're passionate.
As a Canadian, I will say that more than likely, I'm just going to get screwed another way. That's the way it always works.
They're knowledgeable.
Maybe that's where life began, on MU-69. We don't know.
And sometimes they're a bit angry.
Skype, I'm breaking up with you. It's not me, it's totally you.
Gonna Geek Productions presents the official GonnaGeek.com show.
Hello and welcome to episode 219 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Stephen Jondrew, and with me, of course, is the one and only Chris Farrell.
I'm a Jedi, like my father before me.
Ooh, that's because it's Star Wars week. We've also got, of course, Stargate Pioneer.
May the Force be with you, always.
Oh, it is going to be an exciting week, which is, of course, one of the reasons why we are indeed a little bit shorter today. That's right. We got a bit of a shorter show, but you know what? Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and ramble here for a second. I just realized. So another reason that we have a shorter show today is because I'm actually going to have to go away for work this week again. Hopefully one of the last times for a while, but I just realized I'm away for work this week. And what comes out this week?
Star Wars. So you're going to either have to get your butt back on Thursday, or you get to go to a theater Thursday night.
You know, I just realized I'm there with somebody that I work with in my city as well, and he's also a big Star Wars fan. So,
I think you need to get online and find yourself some tickets.
You know what I got to do after this? I got to see if there's any tickets. Yeah, otherwise I'm not going to pay scalper fees or anything. But this is exciting. I can't believe I just thought of that now. Wow, that's crazy.
I think you'll be safe from scalper fees because it's probably going to be playing on like half the screens in all the theaters.
Fair point.
Probably 3/4 in my town, but anyway.
Oh, who's excited for The Last Jedi?
This guy.
I am. It's bound to be a darker film, but I'm still excited to get it on. This is Star Wars. This is new Star Wars. This is my life, literally. I was a young tween teenager when the first Star Wars came out, and I get to see all the way through 9, assuming I live that long. So this is going to be awesome. Can't wait for 8.
Sweet. So we mentioned it's a bit of a shorter episode. Yes, that's indeed partially because of the reasons that I mentioned, but there's also a bit of crazy holiday Christmas chaos coming up in December. And so I'll be honest, to those who listen to the show afterwards, you don't see a lot of change, but those who like to come on live and see us every week, there is a little bit of shake up in the schedule, or if you prefer the schedule, I don't want to exclude here. And so we'll talk about that towards the end of the show and let you know all the deets if you are thinking about coming on by, so that you know exactly what's happening with the GonnaGeek.com show. But before we get there, let's go ahead and roll into the news. Here we go. Oh, look at this. It wouldn't be another episode of the GonnaGeek.com show if somehow Chris wasn't there to talk about how awesome Microsoft is and how bad Sony is. It's pretty much all he ever does on this show.
Well, that's not at all what I was going to do. I was just going to say, hey, Microsoft's taking a bit of a holiday off, so it makes sense that the GonnaGeek.com show should get to take a little bit of a break over the holidays too. See, it was nicer. I'm not making fun of Sony. I wasn't even going to talk about the PlayStation, Steven.
I'm sure, we're on to your tricks. You are constantly coming on this show, spreading your Microsoft propaganda, all because you love Skype.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of this Surface Pro that I'm hugging right now. Surface Pro, you're so comfortable and cold.
Guys, You don't have to say what, but are you planning on buying anything Sony for yourself or a loved one as a gift for Christmas?
No.
Do they make a Surface Pro?
You know, I shouldn't say that. I might buy. I usually end up finding last minute a movie for my wife, so the odds are it's probably going to be made by Sony. So
That's a valid point. I might pick up something.
I have purchased something from Sony already, and it's a gift, and I can't say what it is because I think the person that's getting it listens to the show. So,
I know what it is. It's a Sony shirt.
Did you get me my PS4 SP?
no, I did not.
All right, Chris, what do you got for your news?
So like I was saying, Microsoft taking a bit of a break over the holiday. If you follow Major Nelson, that's his Twitter account, Larry Herb is his actual name on Twitter, he gave some insight a couple weeks back saying, hey, the backwards compatibility team's taking a break. On Twitter, he said, after releasing 136 Xbox 360, 13 original Xbox, and 7 enhanced Xbox 360 titles in 2017, the Xbox One backwards compatibility team is taking some time off for the holidays. Releases resume after the new year. Thank you all for your support this year. So if you're not aware, one of the big things Microsoft has been doing is a big drive towards backwards compatibility with the Xbox One console. Like he said, there's 136 Xbox 360 titles you can now play on this generation console. There's 13 original Xbox games you can play, and then they even took some of the original Xbox 360 titles and gave them a 4K HDR bump for those people that have an Xbox One X. It's been a ridiculously painstaking process, I'm sure, but some of the old games I've gotten a chance to go back and play on my Xbox One now are the entire Mass Effect series, the entire Halo series, GTA 4. I might pick up Assassin's Creed 2 again and start playing it again. I'm not sure. But then going back to my original Xbox, which is like 15 years old, I'm playing Knights of the Old Republic again because it's one of my favorite games of all time, has one of the best twists and stories ever, and Crimson Skies. These are games that are like older than 10 years old that now I'm playing on my Xbox One. It's getting upscaled to 4K. I can stream it directly to Twitch or Mixer on there. I'm sitting here going, wow, this is really cool. And just seeing the number of titles they've pushed out just kind of made me go, that's a heck of an accomplishment. I wish I had that many of those titles to go back and play. For me, it's just been greatest hits. I've said, okay, here's a few titles I want to go pick up and play again. And I've had a great time with it. The sad thing is, if you go and look at a lot of the statistics, it doesn't seem like backwards compatibility is a big driving factor in people buying consoles or playing a lot of these games. Most people are playing the new Xbox One games, but they have the opportunities to go back and get these greatest hits. And it really does warm my heart to be playing Mass Effect 3 on my current Xbox. I could finally clear away all my Mass Effect save games off my old Xbox 360, move them to the Xbox One where they're all backed up to the cloud, and no longer have fear that a catastrophic hard drive crash happens and I lose everything that I've dedicated probably months of my life to because I've played those games way too much. So kudos to you, Xbox One backwards compatibility team. You guys are doing some incredible work, and I cannot wait to see what new games you bring up in 2018 for me to play again.
I actually didn't know that you could port the data over to Xbox One.
Yep.
That's fantastic. I don't have an Xbox One, and I probably won't because, let's be honest, I'm a terrible, terrible individual, but that's exciting though.
So the easiest way to do it is they gave you what they called their cloud drive on the Xbox 360. So literally just copy your save games over to that cloud drive.
Okay.
And then the first time you fire up that game on your Xbox One, it just pulls them off the cloud drive.
That's fantastic.
It was simple. It was easy. I thought I was going to have to thumb drive them over or something like that. Nope, just toss them on there. And I had all my Mass Effect save games and was not missing a thing, and everything loaded like it should. And believe you me, for someone who's played those games so many times, who loves playing this little variant of the character here who made this one mistake versus this character who saved everyone in one fell swoop, it's really good to have all of those save games in one place that is backed up.
Let me ask you this, SB. Have you done this yet? Because I know you got an Xbox One.
Yeah, I started playing Mass Effect 1, and that's it so far, but I do have a lot of games from the 360 that I want to port over, and I've been waiting to hear about their availability, so this is going to be fun. It's really going to be fun because I'm headed to my parents' house for a few days before Christmas, so if I get an hour or two here or there, there's an Xbox One there. I'm going to slip in the Mass Effect disc and get some things going and then save the disc to the cloud, and then when I come back home, log into my Xbox One back here, and off I go to the races with it. It's going to be a fun holiday season. I do intend on gaming a little bit this year.
I'll get your game on.
And this data sync is absolutely one of the things that I think is just so overdue with these consoles, because I just love the idea that you can go do what you just described, SP. That's fantastic. It's such a smart idea for us to finally be in with the world of consoles.
Well, how many times when you were younger have you gone to a friend's house and you've played their console and you haven't been able to sync up any of your data, so you're not bringing your characters or your experience over? Well, now you can. So it's awesome.
Well, back in my day, we had passwords and things like that to basically unlock the levels you'd unlocked. So you'd be playing on the NES and make, what's the password for level 8? Write it down. So when I go over to Jimmy's house, I can start up at level 8 again. So it's amazing how things have evolved in that regard.
It's all about the Game Genie. That's what it was about.
Oh yeah, Game Genie was the greatest. Little Adventures in Dreamland with Nemo. That was the best Game Genie game ever because I'd unlock all the powers to start with, and then it was super easy.
When I went over to my friend's house, I played Lemonade Stand, maybe some Atari 2600. So yeah, there was no porting over your experience in those. Matter of fact, there was no saving your experience in those.
All right. Well, speaking of saving experience, apparently Nokia has saved their experience. That's right. This past week, a court ruled, and it was the International Court of Arbitration ruled that BlackBerry had failed to make payments to Nokia under a license that stems from 2012. This lawsuit's been going on for a little while, and apparently it did end up being ruled in Nokia's favor. Now, here's the fun part about that is that this is not the end of the legal world for BlackBerry and Nokia. BlackBerry has come out and said, we disagree with with what they said, but we accept that that's what the court ruled and that's what we have to abide by. But the reason why it's not over yet is because it is none other than there has indeed been another lawsuit, of course, issued by BlackBerry against Nokia this time. And what it is about a patent that BlackBerry owns, and apparently Nokia is using this patent in the Flexi multi-radio base stations, radio network controllers, and liquid radio software without using proper licensing. So this is just hilarious because this is like the lawsuit history or lawsuit events of dead companies. That's all it is. It's just like how many soon to be gone companies are going to sue each other.
Patent Wars 2017.
There's no money left in it. I mean, what's the purpose? Is it just some hack lawyer that's just clamoring to get a win underneath their belt so they could use it in some other corporate case as justification, as a resume builder? Why is this happening? There's no money. No money.
Well, and the funny thing is, if you remember a few months back, I think it was in like May, BlackBerry was awarded a win against Qualcomm, or it was settled out of court, and Qualcomm decided that they were going to end up paying BlackBerry. So it's just interesting, and it's just like, is this the future of all of these used to be awesome companies? Is that what we're at? So I had to bring it up, though, because we've talked a little bit about how BlackBerry and Nokia have had some really interesting years, and also the fact that there is these lawsuits going on. So I'm so shocked. I hope that eventually these companies just go away. I mean, did I say that?
You did not. I have no idea what's going on. We don't hope they go away.
No, that's right.
I told them we hope you don't go away. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay, guys. Oh, crap, we're live. Shh, don't tell. Get this in post, Steven.
What happens if BlackBerry and Nokia get into robotics? Then they might end up being our robot overlords.
They already are. Don't tell.
All right, and SP, what do you have for your news point?
Well, guys, about a week ago, NASA released this great article, and I got to talk about it. Voyager 1 fired up its thrusters, which have been dormant for 37 years. Oh my gosh. I mean, can you imagine having a car and just stuffing it in a garage and then 37 years later turning the key and it would actually work? That's basically what just happened here. It's awesome. So
yeah, it's pretty slick.
Yeah, what happened is Voyager 1 hasn't used its, and what these rockets are called, trajectory correction maneuver, or TCM thrusters, since November 1980 during the spacecraft's last flyby by a planet, and I believe it was Saturn, which was its epic encounter, by the way, because when we got some really good pictures of Saturn. But on Tuesday, like I said, about a week ago, on November 28th, the NASA team that is flying Voyager 1 fired up the thrusters to see if they would actually work, and they did. And there's a reason behind it, too. The spacecraft, which in August of 2012, by the way, became the first human-made object ever to enter interstellar space, has long been using its standard attitude control thrusters to orient itself into the proper position so it can communicate with Earth. But the performance of these thrusters has been flagging for at least 3 years, so mission team members wanted to find an alternative option. So they did the successful test, and it wasn't guaranteed, but it was a success. And not only was the long layoff a potential issue, but the TCM thrusters were designed to burn continuously for relatively long stretches of time, and they had never before been fired in short bursts, and definitely never to employ in attitude control situations. So now that they are successful, the plan is now to press these TCM engines into service in the attitude control role beginning in January 2018. This should make a difference for the mission, expanding the life of Voyager 1 another 2 to 3 years. Here's the catch. The 4 TCM thrusters actually need heat, which is provided by a heater, and it zaps electricity. So at some point in time, it's going to zap down the electrical power available on Voyager 1, which it is in the middle of deep space. It's not getting anything from solar arrays or anything. It's just literally being powered by its RTG, which if you watch The Martian is the same sort of power source that's in The Martian, by the way. So when the power supply gets too low, the probe's handlers will switch back to the attitude control thrusters. So you're gaining an extra 2 to 3 years, and we'll see what the life is beyond the spacecraft at that point in time.
That's cool. That's really cool. And I actually have a couple legitimate questions on this that I've thought of occasionally, but kept meaning to ask. And sorry to throw you on the spot with this. Number one, how long does it take for the command or the transmission to actually reach some of these craft? Like, I've heard about these, and obviously they were built how many years ago, and it takes a while for signals to get there. How long would it actually take between the time that they sent that command to get to Voyager 1?
I don't remember the exact time, but it's in the matter of hours.
Oh, really?
Because it's beyond Pluto right now. I mean, it's out there.
I, for some reason, thought it would take a lot longer. Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Pluto the planet or Pluto the planetoid?
Let's not go there right now. Don't get me angry. Don't get us be angry. So what happened, like with Mars, right? You have about a 15-minute delay to go to Mars and back, and Mars is our neighbor. So you go beyond that, exponentially beyond that, it becomes hours. And I forget how long it actually is, but it's in terms of hours.
Second question is, I know you said it was surprising and you used the car analogy, but isn't it like sort of assuming that it has what it needs to start up? Isn't it just kind of expected that it would function because it is in the vacuum of space? Like, what would be there other than possible, like, I don't know, whatever, solar flares or whatever? What would be there to really damage it?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Well, first of all, space debris, but more of concern to me would be solar radiation of hitting the electrical components that are actually used to spark the go, no-go signals back and forth to the thrusters to turn on and turn off. Because basically, I'd have to take a look at the actual rockets being used, but I'm guessing it's a solenoid that's controlling the flow of fuel back and forth in the course of an igniter on each thruster. So it's definitely that's got to work. So imagine, I don't know, even taking a remote control that's been around for 37 years. Yeah, you're talking about, or a computer that's been a Lisa computer or something like that that's been around for 37 years, firing it up and it actually working. And with that computer analogy or remote control analogy, you're talking about something that's been protected by the Earth's electromagnetic sphere, so the Van Allen radiation belt, so you're getting some protection from that solar radiation. It is not protected at all. It's probably hardened at some point in time. Like I said, I have to actually look at the spacecraft bus to figure out exactly what's going on, but it's out there and it's being X-rayed all the time by cosmic radiation.
Okay, fair enough. And then the last thing that I think is really fun to think about, and this is just a fun thing to think about, is in 37 years, how many employees have come and gone through touching that program somehow and just wanted to at some point activate it and been like, oh, I knew I could do it, but I wasn't allowed to. And just the disappointment that they have right now.
I want to push the button, man. I want to push the button. That's exactly what it is. I want to push the button. Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of fun to think
I'll
about.
have to look more into this because I assume what they did is they did some tests on a ground mock-up of it. So I don't know. I'll look into it. All I know is that they fired the rockets and it actually worked.
That's really cool. I like that. I love hearing about old tech out in space working still. I love it. It just gets me all sorts of giddy. And you know why it gets me giddy is because I think about every single Star Trek thing that ever plot that ever involved an old piece of space tech.
You mean we found V'ger?
This thing is, I don't, it's hard to subscribe to the whole V'ger storyline, but yeah, at this point in time, it's just taking residual radiation measurements and maybe snapping a picture or two and sending it back. But the bandwidth is so low back and forth to this thing at the lengths of communication really wasn't designed for this part of the mission. It was designed to get as much as it could from the solar system. And then after that, it was like, okay, whatever we can use it for. It's like the Apollo 13 mission. I don't care what it was designed for. What can it do? That's what mode they're in right now. Well, what can we do with this thing?
At some point, you think there must be something that they're just like, what do we got to lose? Like, what do we have to lose at this point?
Well, it is humanity's beacon outside of the solar system. So when it goes dark, there's going to be a sigh of loss, basically, from humanity, at least the scientific community, because like, oh man.
When that happens on this show the following week, we'll do all of it in ones and zeros just to, pay homage to the communication.
Let's do it in hex. That's more fun.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get to this eventually in the SP Space Symposium, not anytime soon, but eventually we'll get to Voyager 1. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this round of SP Space Symposium on space probes, and we'll see where it goes from here. But right now we're stuck at the beginning of space, and eventually we'll get a little way to the 70s. So we've got a ways to go before we get here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. And finally, in our extra section, we got a couple of fun stories here. Number one is the Galaxy S9. This one is actually the one that I think is fun. Is the rumor that just came out this past week. We have a rumor that the Galaxy S9, the one that's going to come out next year, may have some significant camera changes. Number one, the big rumor right now is that there's going to be a dual camera setup seen on the S9. And the second one, which is why I thought that this was fun, is that according to a report from a site called VTechgraphy, so VTechgraphy, that apparently the S9 may get adjustable aperture, which I think is very interesting if they can do that to, of course, increase the size that of the aperture, which, of course, as you may or may not know, lets light into the camera. I think that this is very potential because we are starting to get into really the customizability and flexibility that you get with the traditional DSLR. So if we can start to customize some of these things, that's very interesting. And I don't know that I, to be honest, believe it, but it'd be cool.
And also, let's consider the fact that you could argue the Pixel with its single camera puts out better pictures because Google's software is better and they do better rendering on the backside. So I think we're hitting the point where the sensors are having diminishing returns. You keep tossing a better sensor in there, but if your camera app is crappy, your pictures aren't going to be great. And what Google's done is built one of the best camera apps. Like one of the knocks on the Essential phone when it first came out was the camera was terrible on it. And it's because the app was clunky. People ported the Pixel camera APK and put it on there and it worked better. For those listening on audio, Steven's taking our picture.
With a wonderful Google Pixel. But no,
But it's a Pixel 1.
The software, though, is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And what I find really interesting about the software changes is the fact that we're getting a lot of people who don't want the oversaturated, because forever Apple just got rated so high because of their processing that they did, but it was really just like oversaturated. And now that's starting, you're seeing in a lot of reviews actually become a negative for Apple, because people are realizing that, no, I don't want just this super pink flower when that's not what it was, right? You know, so it's really interesting to see the way the software is evolving. Next up in the extra news, we've got a piece of information here about the Apple. Again, Apple, we're talking about them, so why not? They fixed apparently SDR content on the Apple TV tvOS 11.2. It came out last week, and it solves a problem where there was, with people who were using the HDR compatibility, what it was essentially the Apple TV was upscaling to HDR from just non-HDR content. And it was doing this on the box. So instead of treating it as just putting out a non-HDR signal, like people were thinking, well, if I'm not getting an HDR product, why do I need that to show up on my TV? It was trying to essentially upscale to HDR, of course, using a bunch of resources and not always producing the best result. Well, now they've made an option in there under the video and audio section where you can enable what's called match content, and that will essentially allow it to just put out the non-HDR video in non-HDR video form. So, that's just a basic feature they should have had from the beginning, in my opinion.
You know, the same thing the Rokus and Fire TVs and Shield TVs have been doing since they launched, because it makes no sense to upscale non-HDR content to HDR. The colors are all blown up. It looks out of whack. It's ridiculous. That's such an oversight, and why they didn't catch more crap for the fact that it's automatically putting it to whatever you default as your highest resolution, whether it makes sense or not. That makes no sense.
No, I'm okay with resolution upscaling to a degree. Like, especially when we look at like from 1080, not 1080, but from like SD to HD, it makes a bit of a difference with the picture, but I'm not okay with the HDR difference, because the HDR is color.
Steven, if you're a cinemaphile, in many cases you've bought a TV that has a better up converter in it than what the Apple 4K TV box would have. So you don't necessarily want to send a 4K signal that's been upscaled out of the box. You want to send that 1080p signal one because you trust the upscaler in your TV more to make a better picture.
That's a fair point.
I'll give you guys an example of something that you can't get in HD. At least I haven't been able to yet. The Stargate series, I started purchasing that on Vudu, and you can only get standard definition. So if you only have standard definition, then if it's going to look terrible, if it's trying to convert, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I just think that they should have from the beginning gave you that option. You know, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that most upscaling devices have always given you that option to enable and disable. So I don't know why Apple, well, I know why, because it's Apple, and they just thought that that was the right decision and that was the way it was going to be. So glad to see that that's fixed, because I am a big Google user, but I got to say the Apple TV, some of the things that they've been doing in recent years is pretty appealing. And I like to see, like, for example, the free 4K upscaling when you do buy for Apple TV. I think that that's, or not upscaling, the free 4K version. I think that that's a really, really neat feature, and that shows that they are thinking a little bit, they're still thinking about that market. So I'm glad to see they did this, and hopefully that will bring a few people over to it. And finally, in our extra, this is about House of Cards. You may or may not remember this, but House of Cards is a popular Netflix series, and arguably one of the first Netflix series to really, really get momentum. And so they were in their final season of filming when there were sexual abuse allegations that came out against star Kevin Spacey. Now, they immediately halted production, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And apparently this last week, we had Ted Sarandos, who is the chief content officer of Netflix, announce that production will resume in 2018. So presumably that's going to delay the original anticipated release of the 6th and final season of House of Cards, but it was announced that it will continue. And I got to say, I don't watch House of Cards, but I am a little bit happy to see this, at least based off of what I'm preliminary seeing, because it was one of the first Netflix series to really get a huge following. And so I'm glad to see it's at least going to get wrapped up in a sense.
Now, to be clear, they're going to resume production without Kevin Spacey, correct?
Right.
That is correct. It will now center around Robin Wright's character, Claire, who is Frank Underwood's wife.
Which I haven't watched House of Cards. I've just followed it from the perspective of it's interesting to see that this Netflix series took off and look at where we're at now with Netflix. But I believe they actually sort of flipped it that way towards the end of last season from what I read anyways.
Yeah, I'm way behind and I don't know if I'll actually get caught up because I'm having a hard time separating the artist from the art, and that's neither here nor there. But they did say it will center around Claire, and it's only going to be 8 episodes for the final season, it sounds like. But I think that's okay. And Netflix did kind of a solid thing. The entire time production was halted, they were paying the crew.
Yes.
I read about going on, which is kudos to you guys, because if you're on that crew, that's your big uncertainty is going, oh man, because of all the Kevin Spacey stuff, that's terrible that happened. But now our jobs are on the line for something we have no control over. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad they're continuing the series and wrapping it up with Claire in the role, and that the cast and crew get to finish on their terms.
Absolutely. So there you go. That's going to go ahead and wrap it up for the news and for today's shorter episode. Before we do wrap up, I will let you know a little bit or remind you a little bit of the recording schedule that we mentioned last week on the show. As we said, December is all sorts of chaos. So absolutely, if you are checking out the live shows, you see a little bit of changes. We do usually record this at 5:45 p.m. Pacific time. That's 8:45 p.m. Eastern time at www.geeks.live. And with Christmas falling on a Monday, we are seeing some changes. So what you're going to see is next week, come on back to geeks.live an hour early at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time. That's 7:45 p.m. Eastern to see the next episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show record, and then stick around for the regular recording slot where you're going to see our Christmas special. And for those of you who are listening after the fact, well then, unfortunately, you'll just miss it because the Christmas special will not be released to the feed until the week of Christmas. So if you want to get in a week early, come on by next week, December 18th at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time, and stay around for the couple hours where we have some fun. And then just a friendly reminder as well, the week after that, we will actually be off. We're not going to record an episode. That's the week of January 1st. And the reason why is just because we want, as we mentioned before, we want you to start your year off on a positive note without the GonnaGeek.com show. So definitely come on back on January 8th when the schedule will be back to normal after, of course, you come next week on December 18th. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense to me.
No, just check out the Geeks.live calendar. But for episode 219 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Steven John Drew. Christmas is a-coming.
I'm Stargate Pioneer. I want to hear what you thought of The Last Jedi.
I'm Chris Farrell. The Force will be with you always.
I gotta go find tickets. Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the GonnaGeek.com show. If you enjoyed it, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes or a thumbs up on YouTube. We encourage you to send your feedback by email to show@GonnaGeek.com. You can find our entire archive at GonnaGeek.com/show. And while you're there, why not check out all of the other geeky content on the Gonna Geek Network? Want to chime into our live chat? Join us Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. The music heard on this show is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. This show was produced and edited by Steven John Drew of Gonna Geek Productions. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Hey, so guys, I totally don't have a video going on this one right now, but I want to take a chance at the end to say, hey, thank you so much to everyone who did join us tonight for this live episode of the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast.
So guys, I
and
totally
we'll
don't
see
have a
you all
video
next
going
week.
on this one
Oh
right
crap!
now, but I want to